Are you ready to give up your gas guzzler just yet? Well, the Trudeau Liberals wanted you to, and the Carney Liberals are staying with the insane policy. Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist for the Toronto Sun. Joining me to talk about the electric vehicle mandate that the Carney Liberals are sticking with, despite industry saying it's insane. Kris Sims from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. She is their Alberta director. Kris, explain what's going on for people, because I think this is a sleeper issue that most people don't know about. Starting next year, there's got to be a certain number of EVs sold, and if not, there's penalties for the companies. And let me just state up front, I have no issues with EVs if that's what you want to buy.
Exactly. So I agree with you. I think this was a sleeper issue. Unfortunately, the last election got really stupid really fast, and a lot of things were a distraction.
It was all about elbows or something, wasn't it?
I swear I was having an out-of-body experience at some point, Brian, because it got that dumb. I had to turn it off. So, unfortunately, this wasn't brought up as much as it could have been. So here's the thing. Like you said, this started with the Trudeau government, and it is often referred to as the EV mandate. What we're calling it is the ban on the sale of normal cars and trucks, okay? This is what I think catches people, is that all of the sales of new gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles will be outlawed, illegal, within the next 10 years. And so people's brains kick out, and they're like, oh, that's 10 years from now. I don't need to think about it. But you do.
But
exactly. The restrictions start kicking in 6 months. So in 2026, the seller of a new gasoline or diesel-powered vehicle, a car dealership, 20% of their new vehicle sales must be EVs. They have to be battery-powered cars. If they don't sell, tough cookies. The government is going to start fining them if they don't meet that amount.
Yeah, so they face a financial penalty. So let's say they sell 15%. Zero emission vehicles. And let's be clear, we're talking zero emission vehicles, which means all battery. And StatsCan, they combine both battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid vehicles, which are not the same because plug-in hybrid still has an internal combustion engine component, at least in most of them. They combine them as one when talking about EVs. And they claim that it's about 13%. Really, it's less than 10% total.
Yes.
And it's got to be 20% by next year, or the seller, be it the dealership or the car company, faces a financial penalty, correct?
That's correct. Now, they're still working out the regulations. If you go to the Government of Canada's website, okay, so if people just type in their search engine, EV mandate, Government of Canada, it'll usually be the first government website that pops up. That's when they give a bit of detail saying it starts at 20%, and then it kicks in harder and faster year over year until by 2035 they're completely banned. Now, they talk a little bit about penalties, but as far as I could tell, I can't see how much exactly. So I don't know if it's going to be a percentage of the sales of the evil internal combustion engine or what. Long story short, these auto dealers are going to be financially punished by the federal government if they don't meet their 20% mandate. And so this is why we're raising the alarm bell here at the Taxpayers Federation, because, well, number one, the government shouldn't be in your garage. That's stupid. Like, you should be able to choose what kind of vehicle you want to buy. But two, from a taxpayer's perspective, they're handing out huge subsidies to companies for this that are off and on saying they're going to build stuff. Some of them are folding up shop and not doing it. Two, they're handing out a lot of the so-called rebates, which is costing a ton of money to the Treasury. And three, we don't have the juice for this. Like, we do not have the electricity to power these things.
Yeah, and so let's get to that part in a moment. But Quebec is where about half of the electric vehicles in the country are owned. And they put a pause on their rebate. So if you, in Quebec until recently, if you bought an electric vehicle, you got several $1,000s refund from the government. They put it on pause and EV sales plummeted. People won't buy this without a rebate. No, not all, but some. Like you and I have friends. We have mutual friends. Hello, Barry. Folks who have EVs. Barry's always raving to me about his Tesla. He loves it. I know that's not an in vogue car now. Um, but we know people, even people who are conservative minded, who own electric vehicles and love them, but it doesn't work in all instances, and that's my issue. I'm now a downtown Toronto urban elitist, latte sipping, sushi eating liberal. Okay, I'm not a liberal, but everything else is correct. uh, I see the FedEx trucks around me. I see the Purelator trucks around me, all the delivery trucks. A lot of them in the downtown core of Toronto now are the Bright Drop trucks, which, by the way, thank goodness, made in Ontario, and they're electric. Guess what? That makes a lot of sense. But if you're in Lethbridge, as you are, if you're in Moose Jaw, if you're in Flin Flon, this is not going to make sense in the middle of winter at this point.
Thank you. So folks in downtown Toronto, it probably is a good idea for you, if you can afford it, to get a plug-in vehicle, because it'll save you gasoline money in the long run.
$11 a month, I'm told from some of my friends.
See, that's great. But for folks in like temperate Victoria or Vancouver, okay? I used to live in BC for a long time. You drive into the Lower Mainland, you saw a lot of Teslas there because it worked for those people by choice. The idea of the government coming in and saying, hey, we're going to do blank to you, is almost always a bad thing, because everybody's life is individual and it's complicated. So it doesn't work for everybody to be forced into buying a battery-powered vehicle. To your point, they've now done tests, and it shows that quite often they don't work well in super cold climates. For example, the city of Edmonton, okay, blew millions and millions of dollars on electric buses that don't work because it's cold in Edmonton. Who knew? Everyone, except the people buying the buses. Second, this is the funny part. They spent, I think it was $30,000, Brian, on blankies to swaddle the bus batteries in to try to keep them warm. But it still didn't work. I'm kidding you not. So this is a big issue where people, one, should be able to choose a kind of vehicle they want to drive. And two, the money. The money is just thunderstrucking me.
So you did a video recently for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and I encourage everyone to watch it. But you went through the whole issue of what kind of power grid we would need in order to sustain this. So let's say we all decided, yeah, we're going to go to an EV. This makes sense for me, and we all choose it. Let's say we all individually made that decision without a government mandate. What would happen if we all switched to EVs tomorrow?
We would have a blackout.
Why?
Because we do not have the generating capacity for these plug-in vehicles. And I'll explain why. First, off the top, when it comes to costs, I went and checked it out. If you do kind of a donuts to donuts comparison, a Nissan Leaf, which is one of the cheaper sedan-y type versions of a plug-in vehicle, is still about $20,000 or $15,000 more expensive than its gasoline counterpart. So right there, the sticker shock's still there. But then you start getting into powering these things. So I sat there and I did the math. I found out how much the average plug-in vehicle uses for energy. And then I started working the math backwards. We would need, say, all of our vehicles that we own now, okay? Our Corollas and our pickup trucks and whatnot, the ones that we physically own in Canada privately. Say they magically turned into EVs. We would need 14 new can-do reactors, nuclear reactors, tomorrow. Tomorrow. I'm not talking about the cute little modular nuclear that, Scott Moe and Brad Wall are talking about. No. Those big honkers that you see at Darlington and Pickering, we would need 14 of them. They each cost...
So Ontario is one of the most nuclear forward provinces in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And we only have 3 sites. Now, there's a couple reactors on each site, but we don't even have that many in Ontario.
Yeah.
And nuke is a major part of the grid in this province. So we would have to, so if, the whole country needs 14, we would need at least 6 more.
Yeah. And these things cost around 13 billion. I'm trying to give you the median amount because people say between 10 and 15. Around $13 billion to build each. And last I checked, they said that they take around 10 years to build each. So that is just the juice. Like, that is just the raw power. We're not talking about transmission lines or the fueling stations or the human beings who have the ability.
And we only have about 10% of the charging stations that we would need, correct?
Correct. So this is where things get heavy, Brian. Because if just the raw cost, like doing the simple math of 14 new CANDU reactors, that's about $180 billion. Then you start getting into the charging stations and all the energy lines and stuff. And this is on, what I'm holding up right here is from the Natural Resources Canada. So the federal government, okay, commissioned a bunch of smart people to do a report. How much will it cost to switch to electric vehicles? They said upwards of close to $300 billion.
$300 billion.
To put that into perspective, because it's like you can't really quite picture that amount of money.
But if we all take back our empties and we check for the change in the couch, we should be able to come up with that, no?
This is where it gets depressing, I know. And 300 billion is hard to grok, right? And I used that term before it was cool. I used that term back when it was, sci-fi. 300 billion is so much money. To give you an idea, that would cover the annual grocery bills for 1.7 million Canadian families for 10 years. That's how much money that is.
It is more than half of the current annual federal budget.
Correct. Just for doing this one thing.
So even if we wanted to, we couldn't meet this. The auto industry has been telling the government, and I speak to Flavio Volpe on a regular basis from the Auto Parts Manufacturers Association. Flavio is not opposed to EVs. He has been supportive of the battery plants going in because he says, look, this is the future one day, but not now. And he's been telling them, this is untenable. What you are trying to do will not work. So what do we do in the meantime? And they just don't seem to want to listen. The Conservatives had that motion this week, and as they were asking questions, the Liberals were standing up and saying, we're defending the auto industry. Why aren't you? Meanwhile, the industry saying, we can't do this.
No, they can't. So I've also had a bunch of guys pointing out, like tradesmen and engineers and stuff with me over online on Twitter, on X, saying we also don't have like the people power, the manpower to do this. Like, who are your engineers that are going to be building all this stuff in such a short period of time, let alone where the money's coming from? And this is where things get frustrating because the government seems to sometimes think that it can just declare something to be so and then not have any idea how to actually make it work. They couldn't run a two-car parade. What's that?
Far too often over the last 10 years.
Yes, and this is not a partisan thing. It's just that the Trudeau government was a flaming dumpster fire of a government.
Yeah.
They were terrible. They were the worst government I can recall seeing in the English-speaking world, like in my lifetime. And I read history books.
They would just make announcements and not worry about how things would actually happen. And you and I could go through a litany of instances of that. I encourage everyone to go and check out what the CTF has done on this. Check out Kris's video on this very issue. Share this on social media. Educate yourself because this is going to be a disaster. Kris, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, Brian.
Let us know what you think. Drop a comment down below. Share this on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.